Hare Krishna. Welcome to the live reading of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we have been reading this book since the last 5 days, and we have completed reading preface, introduction, and foreword. And now we have started with Adi Lila, chapter 1. I'm continuing the reading today. Having offered obeisances unto the Lord and all his associates, I shall now try to explain these six diversities in one. There are many unalloyed devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of whom are considered associates surrounding the Lord. Krishna should be worshipped with his devotees. The diverse principles are therefore the eternal paraphernalia through which the absolute truth can be approached. Verse 44. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. Every living entity is essentially a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the spiritual master is also his servant. Still, the spiritual master is a direct manifestation of the Lord. With this conviction, a disciple can advance in Krishna consciousness. The spiritual master is non different from Krishna because he is a manifestation of Krishna. Lord Nityananda, who is Balarama himself, the first direct manifestation of expansion of Krishna, is the original spiritual master. He helps Lord Krishna in his pastimes, and he is a servant of the Lord. Every living entity is eternally a servant of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Therefore, the spiritual master cannot be other than a servant of Lord Chaitanya. The spiritual master's eternal occupation is to expand the service of the Lord by training disciples in a service attitude. A spiritual master never poses as the Supreme Lord himself. He is considered a representative of the Lord. The revealed scriptures prohibit one's pretending to be God, but a bona fide spiritual master is a most faithful and confidential servant of the Lord and therefore deserves as much respect as Krishna. Verse 45. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. The relationship of a disciple with his spiritual master is as good as his relationship with the Supreme Lord. A spiritual master always represents himself as the humblest servitor of the personality of Godhead, but the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of Godhead. Verse 46. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. This is a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:17-27, spoken by Lord Krishna when he was questioned by Uddhava regarding the four social and spiritual orders of society. He was specifically instructing how a brahmachari should behave under the care of a spiritual master. A spiritual master is not an enjoyer of facilities offered by his disciples. He is like a parent. Without the attentive service of his parents, a child cannot grow to manhood. Similarly, without the care of the spiritual master, one cannot rise to the plane of transcendental service. The spiritual master is also called Acharya, or a transcendental professor of spiritual science. The Manu Samhita 2.140 explains the duties of an Acharya, describing that a bona fide spiritual master accepts charge of disciples, teaches them the Vedic knowledge with all its intricacies, and gives them their second birth. The ceremony performed to initiate a disciple into the study of spiritual science is called upaniti, or the function that brings one nearer to the spiritual master. One who cannot be brought nearer to a spiritual master cannot have a sacred thread, and thus he is indicated to be a Shudra. The sacred thread on the body of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya is a symbol of initiation by the spiritual master. It is worth nothing if worn merely to boast of high parentage. The duty of the spiritual master is to initiate a disciple with the sacred thread ceremony, and after this samskara or purificatory process, the spiritual master actually begins to teach the disciple about the Vedas. A person born a Shudra is not barred from such spiritual initiation, provided he is approved by the spiritual master, who is duly authorized to award a disciple the right to be a Brahmana, if he finds him perfectly qualified. In the Vayu Purana, an acharya is defined as one who knows the import of all Vedic literature, explains the purpose of the Vedas, abides by their rules and regulations, and teaches his disciples to act in the same way. Only out of his immense compassion does the personality of Godhead reveal himself as the spiritual master. Therefore, in the dealings of an acharya, there are no activities but those of transcendental loving service to the Lord. He is the supreme personality of Servitor Godhead. It is worthwhile to take shelter of such a steady devotee who is called Ashraya Vigraha, or the manifestation or form of the Lord, of whom one must take shelter. If one poses himself as an acharya but does not have an attitude of servitorship to the Lord, he must be considered an offender, and this offensive attitude disqualifies him from being an acharya. The bona fide spiritual master always engages in unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By this test, he is known to be a direct manifestation of the Lord and a genuine representative of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Such a spiritual master is known as Acharya Deva. Influenced by an envious temperament and dissatisfied because of an attitude of sense gratification, mundaners criticize a real Acharya. In fact, however, a bona fide Acharya is non different from the personality of Godhead. And therefore, to envy such an Acharya is to envy the personality of Godhead himself. This will produce an effect subverse to transcendental realization. As mentioned previously, a disciple should always respect the spiritual master as a manifestation of Sri Krishna, but at the same time, one should always remember that a spiritual master is never authorized to imitate the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. False spiritual masters pose themselves as identical with Sri Krishna in every respect to exploit the sentiments of their disciples, but such impersonalists can only mislead their disciples, for their ultimate aim is to become one with the Lord. This is against the principles of the devotional cult. The real Vedic philosophy is Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, which establishes everything to be simultaneously one with and different from the personality of Godhead. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami confirms that this is the real position of a bona fide spiritual master and says that one should always think of the spiritual master in terms of his intimate relationship with Mukunda or Sri Krishna. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his Bhakti Sandarbha 213, has clearly defined that a pure devotee's observation of the spiritual master and Lord Shiva as one with the personality of Godhead exists in terms of their being very dear to the Lord, not identical with him in all respects. Following in the footsteps of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami, later acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have confirmed the same truths. In his prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur confirms that all the revealed scriptures accept the spiritual master to be identical with the personality of Godhead because he is very dear and confidential servant of the Lord. Gaudiya Vaishnavas therefore worship Srila Gurudev, the spiritual master, in the light of his being the servitor of the personality of Godhead. In all the ancient literatures of devotional service and in the more recent songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and other unalloyed Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is always considered either one of the confidential associates of Srimati Radharani or a manifested representation of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. Verse 47. One should know the instructing spiritual master to be the personality of Krishna. Lord Krishna manifests himself as the super soul and as the greatest devotee of the Lord. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami states that the instructing spiritual master is a bona fide representative of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna himself teaches us as the instructing spiritual master from within and without. From within, he teaches as Paramatma, our constant companion, and from without, he teaches from Bhagavad Gita as the instructing spiritual master. There are two kinds of instructing spiritual masters. One is the liberated person fully absorbed in meditation and devotional service, and the other is he who invokes the disciple's spiritual consciousness by means of relevant instructions. Thus, the instructions in the science of devotion are differentiated in terms of the objective and subjective ways of understanding. The Acharya, in the true sense of the term, who is authorized to deliver Krishna, enriches the disciple with full spiritual knowledge and thus awakens him to the activities of devotional service. When, by learning from the self realized spiritual master, one actually engages himself in the service of Lord Vishnu, functional devotional service begins. The procedures of this devotional service are known as Abhideya, or action one is duty bound to perform. Our only shelter is the Supreme Lord, and one who teaches how to approach Krishna in the function is the functioning form of the personality of Godhead. There is no difference between the shelter giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits an offense in the discharge of devotional service. Srila Sanatan Goswami is the ideal spiritual master, for he delivers one the shelter of the lotus feet of Madana Mohana. Even though one may be unable to travel on the field of Vrindavana due to forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can get an adequate opportunity to stay in Vrindavana and derive all spiritual benefits by the mercy of Sanatana Goswami. Sri Govindaji acts exactly like the Shiksha Guru or instructing spiritual master by teaching Arjuna Bhagavad Gita. He is the original preceptor, for he gives us instructions and an opportunity to serve him. The initiating spiritual master is a personal manifestation of Srila Madana Mohana Vigraha, whereas the instructing spiritual master is a personal representative of Srila Govinda Deva Vigraha. Both of these deities are worshipped at Vrindavana. Sri Gopinatha is the ultimate attraction in spiritual realization. Verse 48. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma, for you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Super Soul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. This was from Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11, sorry, 11th canto, 29th chapter, 6th verse, was spoken by Sri Uddhava after he heard from Sri Krishna all necessary instructions about yoga. Verse 49. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. This verse of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 10, clearly states how Govinda Deva instructs his bona fide devotee. The Lord declares that by the enlightenment in theistic knowledge, he awards attachment for him to those who constantly engage in his transcendental loving service. This awakening of divine consciousness enthralls the devotee who thus relishes his eternal transcendental mellow. Such an awakening is awarded only to those convinced by devotional service about the transcendental nature of the personality of Godhead. They know that the supreme truth, the all spiritual and all powerful person, is one without a second and has fully transcendental senses. He is the fountainhead of all emanations. Such pure devotees, always merged in knowledge of Krishna and absorbed in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations as great scientists exchange their views and discuss the results of their research in scientific academies. Such exchanges of thoughts in regard to Krishna give pleasure to the Lord, who therefore favors such devotees with all enlightenment. Verse 50. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan, taught Brahma and made him self realized. The English maxim that God helps those who help themselves is also applicable in the transcendental realm. There are many instances in revealed scriptures of the personality of Godheads acting as the spiritual master from within. He was the spiritual master who instructed Brahma, the original living being in the cosmic creation. When Brahma was first created, he could not apply his creative energy to arrange the cosmic situation. At first, there was only sound vibrating the word tapa, which indicates the acceptance of hardships for spiritual realization. Refraining from sensual enjoyment, one should voluntarily accept all sorts of difficulty for spiritual realization. This is called tapasya. An enjoyer of the senses can never realize God, godliness, or the science of theistic knowledge. Thus, when Brahma, initiated by Sri Krishna by the sound vibration tapa, engaged himself in acts of austerity, by the pleasure of Vishnu, he was able to visualize the transcendental world, Sri Vaikuntha, through transcendental realization. Modern science can communicate using material discoveries such as radio, television, and computers, but the science invoked by the austerities of Sri Brahma, the original father of mankind, was still more subtle. In time, material scientists may also know how we can communicate with the Vaikuntha world. Lord Brahma inquired about the potency of the Supreme Lord, and the personality of Godhead answered his inquiry in the following six consecutive statements. These instructions, which are reproduced in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9:31 to 36, were imparted by the personality of Godhead acting as the supreme spiritual master. Verse 51. Please hear attentively what I shall speak to you, for transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific but also full of mysteries. Transcendental knowledge of Sri Krishna is deeper than the impersonal knowledge of Brahman, for it includes knowledge of not only his form and personality, but also everything else related to him. There is nothing in existence not related with Sri Krishna. In a sense, there is nothing but Sri Krishna, and yet nothing is Sri Krishna save and except his primary personality. This knowledge constitutes a complete transcendental science, and Vishnu wanted to give Brahmaji full knowledge about that science. The mystery of this knowledge culminates in personal attachment to the Lord with a resulting effect of detachment from anything non Krishna. There are nine alternative transcendental means to attain this stage: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping, praying, assisting, fraternizing with the Lord, and sacrificing everything for Him. These are different parts of the same devotional service, which is full of transcendental mystery. The Lord said to Brahma that since he was pleased with him, by his grace, the mystery was being revealed. Verse 52. By my causeless mercy, be enlightened in truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and pastimes. The transcendental personal forms of the Lord are a mystery, and the symptoms of these forms, which are absolutely different from anything made of mundane elements, are also mysterious. The innumerable forms of the Lord, such as Shyamasundara, Narayana, Rama, and Gaurasundara, the colors of these forms, white, red, yellow, cloud like Shyama, and others, his qualities as the responsive personality of Godhead to pure devotees and as impersonal Brahman to dry speculators, His uncommon activities like lifting Govardhana hill, marrying more than 16,000 queens of Dwarka, and entering the Rasa dance with the damsels of Praja, expanding himself in as many forms as there were damsels in the dance. These and innumerable other uncommon acts and attributes are all mysteries, one aspect of which is presented in the scientific knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, which is read and adored all over the world by all classes of scholars with as many interpretations as there are empiric philosophers. The truth of these mysteries was revealed to Brahma by a descending process without the help of the ascending one. His mercy descends to a devotee like Brahma, and through Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, from Vyasadeva to Sukadeva, and so on in the bona fide chain of disciplic succession. We cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors. They are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. In other words, impersonalists who depend upon the strength of their poor fund of knowledge and morbid speculative habits without submission and service in the forms of hearing, chanting, and others mentioned above cannot penetrate to the mysterious region of transcendence where the supreme truth is a transcendental person free from all tinges of the material elements. Discovering the mystery of the Lord eliminates the impersonal feature realized by common spiritualists who are merely trying to enter the spiritual region from the mundane platform. So, friends, with this, we will conclude the reading for today. I will see you all tomorrow. Please continue to join the reading and gain the benefits of the same. Hare Krishna.